Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Coolermaster Q300 V2. They've added some funky extra features to the old one, which was immensely popular, helping bring it slightly more up to date without bringing the pricing up aggressively also. Now, they're going to be $59.99 GBP, but for the first 2 weeks after launch, which is technically the 5th of September 2023, you will be able to get it for $49.99. So if it's something that tickles your fancy, then I would say maybe think about it more aggressively so that you can save an extra £10, which with a case so cheap, it does mean that you are saving an awful lot of money. But hopefully my video that we have here today will be able to make your mind up. Now, I always start at the top and the front, and today is going to be no different. Power switch, USB Gen 3.2 Gen 2A and a single C, and then a combined headphone and microphone slot. Now, they say that they've worked really hard on the design of the dust filters, which, because it is such a basic case, are just magnetic and are just on the outside. But the little circles on them are just part of a print because they're just plain on the other side. Now, they said, like I said, they've worked on this to provide good dust filtering while still allowing good airflow. Now, in the roof, you can see it is just all perforated, and that is exactly the same down the front. And there's a reason for that, which I'll show you in a bit. But what I do want to draw your attention to here is there are some slight differences in the patterns. And it's like one of those games where you see that you have to spot the different numbers in a like a big list, and they're all 94s apart from one says 93. But if you have a look, you can see there and there are some different looking holes. And if we zoom out, you'll probably notice a few more of them, and that's because they're fan mounts. So there's another one there, and then further up there's some more. And that's because you can fit two 120mm fans or two 140mm fans in the top, but also in the front. And it is exactly the same look and design, same mesh, same layout for the fans. I'll talk to you about how fans get affected on the inside, but technically you do have a little hole here, so you could put them through from the outside if you wanted. It's the same on the roof, but something that this case does do, this is the back panel, and you can see there are rubber feet on it, and that's because you can tip it over and have it the other way round if you wanted. Now, in the bottom there is a dust filter down here in the bottom. I'm going to call it the bottom because you can see it has the square feet, so it looks like it's meant to stand up more than it is lay down. It's just a different configuration for if you need it at home. These are little rubber bungs, but you can pop the dust filter off. I'm not going to take them all off, but there is another 140mm and 120mm fan mount just here. Again, I will talk to you about that in a moment. So, round the back, I've already removed the screw because I have got a graphics card in there, and I didn't want to have to undo all the screws as well. So you get a single screw here, but normally when you refit this, you then screw your graphics card screws through the bracket. So I've not done it this way just to be able to make things easier to be able to show you today, but it's an old school one, like I said, where you have to screw it in, but also it's old school in that you have to break the blanks off as well. And if you've never seen one, I'm scurriedly looking round trying to find out where I've put them, because they were here just a second ago, and you just snap them off of the metal and then you fit your graphics card. You can fit normal I/O ones if you want, but you'll want the clips, you want the covers that come slightly outside the case. They've got a little tag that will sit on the outside rather than being directly straight. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Also, power supply in the bottom, but again, I will talk to you about this in more depth in a second. Round the back, we have to remove screws to take it off, and it's not a big job, but they're not captive. And by they're not captive, I mean when you unscrew them, they completely come off. And then we are into the rear of the case. Now, one thing I would like to say is, and I'm going to probably have to do this in a very janky way, but there are some grommets up here at the top. Now, there's a right angle at the top of the motherboard tray, and it comes up to the outside of the case, and they're up there. Now, it's a very clean way of doing it, but it's also quite difficult for me to be able to show you. But there you go, they are up there, and that's how you can pass the fan cables through, your 8-pin for your CPU if it's up there. If you've got an ITX board, then it might not be, so this will come in handy. But that is mimicked also almost identically at the bottom. So that is something to keep in mind. There are lots of cable routing holes and scattered. I'm not sure what these large ones are for in reality. Would it have been better slid down? There's some hard drive mounts around and about, so you could say they're for putting the hard drives through, and that's probably what they're for. But they are 3.5-inch hard drive mounts, but I just think this could have, I don't know, maybe been done slightly better. But it's all about keeping costs down. So that's just something for you guys to keep in mind. You can see there's a graphics card in there. Again, we'll talk to you about it in more depth when we go on the other side. And you can also see that you've got a hard drive mount over here. Large area, old school. We'll talk about open back plates. It wasn't that long ago when we didn't have CPU cutouts around the back of the boards. Oh God, I'm showing my age. Plenty of tie downs for clips, and like I said, plenty of cable routing holes as well. On to the business side, and this is tempered glass. It was plastic on the last one, but it's tempered glass. There's little rubber grommets where the screws go through, and the screws are captive, which means they're not coming off in my hand unless I actively try and pull them out. Lovely large panel, like I said, glass, slight tint to it, which could work if you're going to end up covering this in lots of lights. Now, one of the things I will say is it's not immensely clear because it's quite dark and it's quite difficult to get lighting in there, but there's not enough room above the tray, as in directly above this heatsink, to get an AIO in there, and the fans and the mounts at the top are not offset. If they had have offset them, you probably could have got away with it. So in reality, if you're going to mount or want to put an AIO in this case, you're going to have to get creative. I think you could just drill it. And I genuinely think you could put a mark out on the roof, as in print one, mark where you need to put the holes, drill the holes, mount your AIO anyway, and it's just mount it very far over. But I do think it's possible. If you're not going to go AIO, and let's face facts, if you put an AIO in this, you could double the value of the case, or spend more than double the value of the case on an AIO. More than enough room for 120 or 140 25mm fans up there. The other place that we can put fans, as I said, is in the front. Now, maximum length of graphics card would be 330mm if you wanted to get a fan in at the other side as well. And I have to move it down because there's poor camera shots and Tom's being useless. But we're obviously super professional, but effectively there is a fan there and we can pass it through. 330mm graphics card, 25mm fan, you can get it in the front. So you can have two 140s in the front up to 330mm graphics card. But the other place that you can mount a fan is in the bottom. Now, I had a slight problem with the bottom fan mount because if you put a power supply in there, technically they both do fit. But once you've got all the cables coming out from the power supply in the bottom here, it is going to impact the airflow on this lower fan no matter what you do. Now, if you have no other option and you've already invested heavily in your power supply, this is only 160mm length, normal ATX length one, by the way. if you go any longer than 180, you will not be able to fit this fan at all. And I actually think if you went 180 with the power supply length, you'd struggle to get all of your cables plugged in on a lot of power supplies anyway. But you have your fan in the bottom, it's going to get the airflow disturbed by the cables that come out the power supply. But there is a very simple way around it if you've not already bought your power supply, and that is just use an SFX one. SFX ones are tiny in comparison, and you're not going to have any problems with your cables, and you're not going to have any problems with your fan mount. And if you've done that, then you can have the best of both worlds. And this one is, you can get them up to 1300 watts. I think they start from 450 or 650 and go up to 1300 watts. So technically you could, if you wanted to, have this power supply in here, this fan in there, and a 4090 in there. So that is just a suggestion from me. Obviously you could go for a cheaper SFX power supply. All of those things are totally up to you. I'm just saying that if you do want to add extra fans in, this could be a very lovely way of you being able to work around it. And I wouldn't personally run it with the fan up. It was just a nicer way of being able to show you that it was a itty bitty power supply. Now the gap is there because it's obviously not an SFX back on it, but most SFX power supplies come with adapter plates to go onto the ATX, which will make your life very easy, give you extra room, and then obviously extra airflow. Beyond that, it does come with a single 120mm fan in the back out of the box. Motherboard wise, it's designed for an M-ATX, but that obviously means you can put an ITX in there if you want. And I've spoken to you about graphics card length. If you have a shorter graphics card, that could mean that you could put a 240 or a 280mm AIO in the front without too many problems. So that's just some ideas for you for the config and the layout and how to possibly get the best performance and the best kit inside your case. So yes, no performance numbers, but it comes with one fan, and we've always said that we wouldn't add fans in because that's a personal thing at home. And if we put Noctuas in, someone's going to ask us about, say that, you know, 2 Noctuas are worth more than the case, and there's lots of arguments to be had. So we've always done the KISS, and let's keep it simple, stupid. Also, the kit that we normally use is ATX, and the M-ATX version of it died about a year ago, and I've just never replaced it. That's completely my fault, not yours. But I think you can understand my point in that with this case, you're going to get a different story from each owner depending on what they want to put inside and the extras that they add to it. So with a 50 or a 60 pound case, adding in a 25 pound fan for lots and lots of extra airflow isn't really going to make a lot of sense. But if it's something that you've already got at home and you've been using before, then it does make sense. But it's a very confusing one. But I've given you lots of info where you can put fans, how big graphics cards you can go, how and where you could put an AIO if you want. My tip for if you want to put a fan in the bottom to feed a hot graphics card and you've not got a power supply, maybe look at some SFX power supplies to save you a little bit of room. If you're not that worried about it, just smash a cheap ATX in and you're away. It's completely down to you to decide which way you want to go. So, my only real gripe with this case, in reality, is the roof, or what would normally be the roof. And I wish that they'd just offset those mounts so that if you did want to put an AIO in it, there would be enough room. But you can download radiator schematics online that you can print off really easily, and that will show you where you could drill if you wanted to do it. You may be able to get them to line up roughly, but I would probably go with get them exactly where you want it and then work from there out. Just remember where the screw holes are to add about 5mm, just because your fan's going to be slightly bigger and then the radiator's going to be slightly bigger again, only just a little bit, but just so that you don't try and screw it in and then suddenly it won't go in because you've drilled too close to the edge. Anyway, it's actually a cracking little case for the money, amazing in such, and it definitely deserves a value for money award. But I do think everyone's journey is going to be different based on exactly what I've just been explaining to you. It depends what you want to put inside, where you want to get from it. But I think this could be an amazing modders play toy as well. Because if you're going to put a fan in the bottom and an AIO in the roof, what's to stop you if you didn't want to cut in the front open and put in a plexiglass window in like the old days? There are lots of things like that that you could do and play around with and have a great deal of fun at the weekends. And when it's a case that's £60 rather than £260 or £360 or even more, it is less daunting to break the Dremel out. So could even be a modder's choice really, because it could be something fun. Maybe it's something you can get the Dremel out and do with your son or your girlfriend and just have it as a weekend project. And I think that's why I like it so much. It's because if you can adapt it and tweak it for what you want at home and even what you can afford. But for now at least, this has been the tiniest one with the Q300 V2 review out.